Hey, welcome y'all! Hey! That's right. This is the Pregame Engineer Tailgate Mayor Racing Podcast, episode number 64 for Wednesday, September 21st, 2016. I'm Tailgate Mayor Rusty Wallace, joined in the PETM Podcast Studio in Atlanta, Georgia, as always, by Pregame Engineer Andrew Shoren. What's up, buddy?
I can't believe we've done 63 shows and we're doing 64. I can't believe the guests we've got today. We're super stoked.
We are super duper stoked.
We've reached like national media motorsport stuffs.
Right?
It's hard to understand.
Right? So on the show with us today, we've got a motorsports writer for USA Today. He almost needs no intro. He is the OG when it comes to the Twitter tweet up. When I started on Twitter 6 years ago, I didn't know what I was doing. I asked Sherwin, I said, hey, what's this whole Twitter thing about? What should I do? He said, just follow some NASCAR guys, and you'll get a lot of cool news and stuff and breaking stuff. And he said, the one guy you need to follow, 6 years ago he told me this, one guy you need to follow first and foremost is Mr. Jeff Gluck. And he's on with us today. What's happening, Mr. Jeff Gluck?
What is happening? This is such a good night to come on because my head's been spinning the whole week with all this crazy penalty inspection stuff. And now another thing just came out like 30 minutes ago, and it's like, man, like it's almost gonna be like therapy to just talk it out, you know.
Excellent. Well, we'll get to talking it out in just one moment.
Dilute the insanity.
That's right. The first thing we do, to get through all this insanity, and the first thing that I missed doing this segment of our show one time, and our fans just
ate us up.
Yeah, ate me up. Had me wrung around the neck. But we call it the What You Drinking segment. Mr. Jeff Gluck, you got anything in your hand today?
Yes, I do have something in my hand. It's kind of random, a little bit of a story. So there's this really, really cool salad place called Chopped near me, and like I'm not like super into salad, but I'm telling you, this is like such a good place. Crazy, different, weird flavors of salad. So they have this whole line after you get the salad of like all these different drinks. They have like raspberry lemonade, regular lemonade, green tea, all this stuff. So cucumber water. So basically what I have is like this mixture of all the drinks because I don't just want to go with one of the drinks. I want to like try to get a whole thing going. So I create my own drink. So it's like mostly green tea, a little bit of raspberry lemonade, and a little bit of cucumber water.
Yeah, do the suicide.
Drink.
Like
that's like the graveyard from Burger King when we were 5.
Yeah, right? We called it the suicide that just hit every one of them. I love it. That's awesome. The 34-year-old, 35-year-old suicide drink at the salad place. I'm digging it. Let's jump straight into it, Jeff. We've got, I don't even know where to start on this one. The penalties from last week from Chicago. We'll just start with what happened and then start getting your thoughts on it. Of course, we had both Truex and Jimmy. So Truex winning the race, Jimmy getting, I don't know, whatever he got, 12th or so. And then both of them failed the laser inspection that we've talked about on this podcast before, and I'm sure you've talked about. Everybody has written and talked about it and come up with different situations. And this perfect storm came up to where it's like, okay, well, if we penalize both of them the same number of points, then pretty much Johnson loses 10 spots and Truex loses nothing because he has a win to put him in the next spot. So anyway, what they decided to do, which is the breaking news here that 30 minutes ago that they told us about.
Yeah, we were watching the NASCAR show on NBC.
Yeah, and they said, here it is. We've got breaking news right now. And they said that we're not going to penalize either one of them. We're getting rid of, what was it, P2 and P3 penalties. And
just
we're only
erasing
doing
them.
Yep, and we're only doing P4 penalties going forward. So, with all that said, Jeff, what's NASCAR saying with this? What's the story here?
Well, I like what they had to say today. They basically said, we kind of messed this one up. We didn't really see this one coming. We didn't see this scenario. And I've had some people say on Twitter, well, they should have seen it coming. And maybe yes, you could argue that. But what I'm looking at is that they did change it before the chase really got going, and this really had an impact. Because personally, I think that this was going to be a topic for many of the next 9 weeks. I think. You were probably going to have at least once per round somebody was going to be failing. And and people are going to be upset because, well, how come they only got this and how come they only got that and how come the winner didn't get this? And I mean, the bottom line is NASCAR looked at it and they said they saw what we saw, which is that, okay, Martin Truex Jr. wins the race. He's going to get a 10-point penalty, but it means nothing to him. Mm-hmm. Jimmy Johnson has the exact same penalty, but it's going to like kill Jimmy Johnson's chase hopes essentially because he didn't have that win to move on automatically. So they're like, this penalty's not fair, really. It's not fair to all 40 competitors, so we're just going to get rid of it. So now they're in a situation where they've got rid of the minor penalties starting today. The only penalty for failing post-race laser inspection is the giant encumbered penalty. Mm-hmm. So it's good. Teams probably every week are going to be having what would have been P2, P3 penalties. So they're going to have an opportunity to get way up to that line, but they better not go over it because it's going to be like a speeding penalty with the 5 mile per hour grace period thing. Where you can go up to it, but if you cross it by the littlest bit, you're getting dinged.
Yeah, and you have no repercussion after that. You have no recourse, I should say.
Well, we had a follower ask a question last couple weeks of what's the over-under on how many people are going to get an encumbered win or be somehow eliminated from the chase because they stepped over that line. And I don't know, we kind of thought maybe it was probably only going to be one, but we haven't had the one yet.
Mm-hmm. And
the thing is, they said that the level of the violation that would be considered encumbered, they haven't seen a car get to that point all year. It hasn't even come close to that.
Yep.
So this is significant. Like, if you actually got to that point, you pretty much blatantly cheating, or you pretty much designed it to be that way. Yep. This is not going to be something that happens from crash damage or, he just went over, or, this blah, 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 he hit me. No, this is going to be something where you design the parts to bend that way. And if you want to risk it, go ahead, but you may not like the outcome.
Right. It opens up. It feels like now. So I'm mumbling here because I got so much going on in my head. But number one, I think it's the right call. Absolutely the right call right here. And on top of this, they also announced, and this was one of our listeners' questions later on. But they also announced that every chase driver is going to go through the post-race inspection now, the laser inspection now, which I think is also a very good idea at this point. But so it's opening up kind of this.
So we'll suspend that till later.
Yeah. So these can of worms. Jeff, do you think if Truex didn't fail inspection, would Jimmy have been penalized at 10 points?
I think so. That question wasn't asked on the conference call, but the opposite was. Like, somebody asked if Truex if only Truex had failed and not Jimmy, would you still have changed your mind on this? And NASCAR said yes, because they would have realized that it wasn't fair. But I don't know what would have happened if only Jimmy had failed. I think that there would have been this probably wouldn't have been changed. And if you go just one more week into the chase with this rule and you've already penalized Jimmy, you're pretty much stuck with it, because at that point, there's no clean break to say. I mean, it was kind of dicey enough for them to say, we're changing our rule, we're not going to penalize them. But if there had already been people penalized during the chase, that would have been pretty bad. Now, I know there's some fans on Twitter have been saying, well, I wonder how Ryan Newman feels. He got penalized for this, and he ended up missing the chase. But it's a lot different in some ways for the 3-race stretch than for 26 races,
Mm-hmm. Do you think... similarly, does Newman have kind of a chip on his shoulder now for 2 or 3 weeks ago, having essentially been taken out of the chase with a similar infraction, or is this more of a now we're in the chase, now we're doing something different thing?
Yeah, well, I think that this rule will hold over for the regular season going forward, but I mean, at least if you're Newman, maybe you can say, well, thanks to Tony Stewart, he missed the chase by more points than he lost with that penalty anyway. So maybe it didn't totally come into play. Now, if Stewart hadn't wrecked him, you might have more of an argument. But I don't know. At least Tony Stewart might have done everybody a favor by saying, well, it's a moot point.
Sure. And I thought it was interesting, too, that NASCAR's admitted fault here. It's not. I think we saw it happen. What was it we saw it happen with last year? They said, yep, our bad. And this year they're saying it again with this one. It's a rare sighting, a snipe hunt to see NASCAR saying, yeah, we really didn't think of that situation. We're just going to go ahead and fix it here and wipe it off the grid. What do you think?
Well, I really, really like that's the best part to me. I mean, like, NASCAR is pretty stubborn about things sometimes, and they really don't admit fault very much, even when it seems to the rest of us like it's kind of obvious. So here's the direct quote is, "This one is on us. We missed that. It's something that's not fair. It's hard to understand, and we're doing our best to rectify that." To me, if NASCAR says stuff like that more often in these situations, it kind of takes a lot of the anger or the smoke, I guess, out of the fan base being, outraged. Like, if you say, you know what, you guys are right, we messed up and we're going to fix it. Some people still be mad and be like, well, you shouldn't have done that, in the first place. But a lot of people say, okay, well, now that you understand and you did something about it, that's okay. NASCAR, historically, as you said, they don't really admit fault very much. I think they still insist that there was oil. There was no oil on the track at that Watkins Glen finish a few years ago. So,
Bobby Labonte.
So it's I don't know. It was good to hear that. I think that's part of the new NASCAR, and I do like that they were flexible going forward. I'm sure it was tough to admit a mistake in some ways, but at least they changed it instead of being stuck with this for the entire next, because it would have overshadowed the entire rest of the playoff.
Sure.
Yeah, I think admitting some fallibility and introducing some transparency, I think, has a soothing feeling to the pitchfork mob, at least some of them anyway. I think the fact that they're willing to admit, we thought we had a really good rule, and then we walked face first into a situation that we couldn't predict, and now we're reacting to it in a way we think is fair to all the competitors. I don't know how you could get too upset about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what happens, not just in NASCAR, but any sort of controversy, right? Like in sports and life, news, anything. Somebody does something that the public perceives as bad, or a group of people perceive as bad and wrong or incorrect or inappropriate or whatever. And this storm of anger or outrage sort of builds up because the longer somebody goes without apologizing or admitting that it was wrong or whatever, like the longer it goes on, the more the storm builds up and just this controversy grows, and people are like, I can't believe this guy's not apologizing, or how can he think that's okay, or whatever the situation is. And then if somebody apologizes and say they're wrong, I think, we've always seen that our society is very forgiving and people like to give second chances and things like that. And people in general, I think, can relate to people that make mistakes or, whatever. So, to see NASCAR in this situation say, our bad, like, we're going to fix this. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I think it's nice.
And maybe it's a learning opportunity for them to see the fallout of it and see, hey, actually, admitting fault, you're not going to admit fault every week and say, yep, our bad, because eventually it's like, well, what was your good then? But being able to see every once in a while, hey, we can admit fault and say, you're right. Maybe that's something that they'll be encouraged by the response that they see out of this one. So,
Well, it sounds like to me they've probably soaked in a lot of feedback from the teams, because the reason why we do this post-race laser inspection is because the teams asked for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cost-cutting measure because the parts and pieces they need to get the car to move around during the race are extremely expensive to innovate, and this is a way to try to limit some of that expenditure. So I expect, at least within the teams, there's not going to be a lot of backlash from this decision.
Yeah. So, Jeff, we do a couple segments here. It's called Tearing It Down and Gassing It Up. We tear down the last race a little bit, and then we gas it up for the next race. I'm going to bring on the Tearing It Down here. It's been a joke with me and Sherwin for a while. We've been NASCAR fans for a long time. We've only been doing this podcast for a year because we said, hey, we talk to each other about NASCAR a lot. Why don't we just talk into microphones and build a following of people who hate what we have to say? But one of the things we used to say, and we joke about it now, is we say, remember when Martin Truex was good? Because we used to tell each other that back several years ago and say, Truex isn't any good, or he was good, and now he's not any good anymore, blah, blah, blah. But now it's funny to me with this race. We were talking about with his first win this year, we sat on this podcast, and the question came up, is he a contender for the chase? And we had a whole segment about that, probably spent 15 minutes talking about it, saying yes or no, or going back and forth over the two options. He won his second race, and it was like, okay, well, this guy's he's actually got a,
for real.
Yeah, this is for real. And now he's won in the chase, so there's no question that he's a chase contender. I'm curious if you have evolved in any opinions as well, or if you've seen, all along just by the team that he's got and the car that he's got, that he was a contender from the beginning.
Well, I think what really got my attention was the Coke 600 this year. Mm-hmm. To have that kind of dominating performance, and you'd seen him come close a lot, and he kept having that pattern of bad luck. And then when you saw how he could put it together, you're like, oh man, if they could do that in the playoffs, it'd be pretty much unbeatable, especially on a mile and a half track. Then when he wins Darlington, and you're just like, this is a pretty good team. If they, maybe they've gotten their bad luck out of the way, maybe they execute a little bit better in the chase. Going into the chase, he was my favorite to win.
Oh, wow.
I picked him to win the whole thing.
Gotcha. Well, there's a mile and a half in every segment, so
that
bodes well for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the thing is too, it's like they were pretty good last year. I mean, they made the Final Four, and with them going to Gibbs and Toyota, you knew it was going to be a pretty good combo, unless they had some weird growing pains that we didn't see coming. And it's like, man, they are just lights out pretty much. I mean, they're the fastest Toyota. I think it was Jimmy Johnson that said on Media Day, he was talking about how, like, the Stewart-Haas cars and the Furniture Row cars are actually in a better spot than the teams that are supplying them, because, Stewart-Haas gets their stuff from Hendrick, and Furniture Row gets their stuff from Gibbs. And so Jimmy was saying something like, basically, Hendrick and Gibbs are doing all this work to develop these cars. Then they give it to teams that also have some very smart people, and they're taking their resources into making the cars even better. Mm-hmm. They don't have to spend their resources in the first place to make them already competitive. So Furniture Row takes all the Gibbs ideas, and they're like, puts their own little twist on it.
Yeah.
And I think in general, they've been faster than the Gibbs cars. I mean, the Gibbs cars are still good, but the 78 looks pretty good. Now, the chase, the format is so difficult though to predict.
For sure.
So you can't really tell, but I still think they're kind of the ones to beat.
Is he he's still your pick? Obviously, if you picked him before this race, why wouldn't you still after this race?
Well, after he had a tire fall apart on the first run on Sunday, I was like, oh man, boy, I really jinxed that one.
That was
I really
a Truexing moment.
Yeah, but obviously he's put it back together, so I'll stick with him now.
Well, the thing I would say what may be lost in that discussion is how much money exchanges hands between SHR and Hendrick and Furniture Row and Gibbs in order to buy those chassis and engines, et cetera, because there's a tremendous amount of money involved in that exchange. So there is
definitely. I mean, if I was starting a race team, there's no way I'd build my own stuff at all. Like, because that just seems like a money pit. But if you could find a good team and become like a customer of them, I mean, obviously, if I was starting a race team, I'd have enough money to do that. So,
right, it's a hobby. It's not a business.
Could do it, but yeah. It would definitely cost a lot of money, but I think that Barney Visser, Furniture Row, sells a lot of furniture.
He's got a little bit of cash
the money to do
around.
so.
He's got the furniture. Let's move to a segment that we call Gassing It Up. So we've torn it down from Chicago. We're going to gas it up going into the Magic Mile. it's one that has been it hasn't been very magic for a few races there. So we've talked about it on our podcast, me and Sherwin have, that it's been one of our bucket list racetracks to go to. I think it fell down a couple pegs if we're keeping up with the top 25 every week or something. But Jeff, what do you think, and what are the storylines for this weekend you're looking at?
Well, I think it's definitely New Hampshire has struggled to have some good finishes. It's weird because you would think, it's kind of a shorter track, so it should race like one. It should race like a Martinsville a little bit, but because it's flat but it just, I don't know. They tend to get strung out there. It tends to be a lot of green flag runs, and we've even seen the last few years some few mileage races at New Hampshire. Because they're just going on and on and on and on. Think about last year's chase race where all those guys ran out of gas at the end. Harvick. So that could definitely happen again. But what I'm really watching is the Toyota domination. If you go back to July, I think that the Toyotas combined to lead 299 of the 301 laps. I mean, it was crazy.
Wow.
I think it was Kenseth, maybe Kyle and Truex who led the most. But and obviously Kenseth ends up winning it. Truex, I think, had more bad luck, but I can't remember which bad luck it was that time. So I think, I think that the Gibbs cars are probably, Gibbs cars plus Truex are probably the ones to beat again. We'll see if Hendricks made gains like they did, at Chicago and going to start of the chase. But my pick for New Hampshire is going to be Denny Hamlin because I think, he's been pretty good there. He has the best driver rating. He has the best average finish. So he's won twice there. He's driving a good car. So I'm just going to go with that.
Awesome. Well, since you've taken us into it, Sherwin, you want to give us a pick?
Yeah, I do. I do want to give a pick. I don't know if this is sentimental or maybe it's sentimental. I don't know. I think so. Everybody was talking about how all of a sudden Hendrick found some horsepower at the last 2 or 3 big tracks we've been to. I don't think it was horsepower they ever lacked. I think it was front end geometry they needed to do work on, and because so, I think the most technical driver with the best car that's driving a Chevrolet right now for Hendrick is Chase Elliott.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pick Chase Elliott.
Well, I mean, I think it's a great pick. I mean, it was Chase Elliott in this last race until the thing happened.
Right. It's only a matter of time. And I'm not going to be John Roberts where he picks Biffle every week. I'm not going to be that, but I have picked Chase a lot, both as a dark horse and as my front runner, but I'm picking Chase.
I like it. So we had who was it that won? Was it Kenseth that won earlier this year?
Yep,
sounds about right.
Yeah, and there's a lot of guys who had. The top 5 I think looked like the strong guys that we talk about. Harvick was up in there. Logano was up in there. So I'm picking Logano. By the way,
okay, good pick.
So Logano was up in there. I think he's kind of waiting in the wings right now, ready to strike, and I think this is
quietly finished second last week.
Yeah. So he's there. He's ready to roll. So I'm digging it. We're also Xfinity chasing is starting at Kentucky this coming week. So Jeff, anything that we're looking at? Anything you're looking at for that chase story?
Yeah, I'm just interested to see how Eric Jones does. I mean, he won the most races, but Elliott Sadler led the points. So, it's going to be one of these things where does it favor somebody to win or does it favor to be consistent? This is obviously the first time they've done the Xfinity chase, so nobody really knows how it's going to work out with those cars. I think there's a lot of those cars the Xfinity chase is way too big for the field that they have. Way too big.
Yeah,
it should be probably 4 cars less at least. So you pretty much have most of the regulars in there that are even halfway decent. So you wouldn't think that it would be that hard to get through the first couple rounds unless you have a mistake, and then you get down to the nitty gritty. And to me, it seems like the Gibbs cars are the ones that show up with speed every week. So I think that would favor Eric Jones and Suarez, but you never know in a one-race deal, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So, Yeah, looking forward to that starting. Like you said, and we you're not going to offend anybody here. We talked about it on last week's podcast about the chases both for Xfinity and for the trucks. At what are these? And we brought up some stats on the guys who were just barely squeaking in 12th and 11th place, and I think it's even more pronounced in Xfinity than it is in trucks. But just,
well, it's because of the depth of the field they're including.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it was some funny stats on the guys who are in the bottom of the top 12 there. So, Jeff, we wanted to surprise you with one thing here, and hopefully it's not too big of a surprise or anything. But
all right.
You're known for one of the coolest columns you do every week, and it's so fun to read that and read what everybody has to say is your 12 questions. And for those of you who don't know, Jeff Gluck does 12 questions and it's the same 12 questions every season. Is that right, Jeff? So every season you're changing up the questions for the next season? Yep.
This is year number 7, I think. So
wow.
I'm kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel on the questions, but yeah, they've changed up every year.
Like, what do you have for breakfast? What do you have for lunch?
Yeah.
So we thought we'd turn the tables on you, Jeff, and do a 12 questions with Jeff Gluck. What do you think?
Okay, we could try it.
We could try. I think now a lot of these questions, some of them came from our loyal listeners. Some of them we just came up with and thought it'd be fun to just do that with you. Question number 1 for you. I would call you a new media guy. Not saying that you're new, but that the media that you're in is in a lot of ways new. You're bringing a lot of stuff new to the table to what I would call an old guard of racing and NASCAR reporting, and wanted to know what that's been like for you.
You know what? It's the best part of my job for me.
Awesome.
Like especially the tweet ups and stuff, and that's the best part of my race weekend, and the best part of the job in general is just going on Twitter and seeing what people are going to say. I don't really think that I would honestly get that much satisfaction out of it if I wasn't hearing from everybody all the time, because it's almost like, remember when you were in high school and you would spend some time writing an English paper or something and you turn it into the teacher, you work hard on it or something, you turn it into a teacher and you're like, oh, I hope this is good, I wonder what she's going to say, and then 2 weeks later you get it back or something. And you're like, oh, I wonder what the grade was. Well, when I write an article and post it on Twitter, it's almost like instant grading.
Yeah.
Good or bad.
Everybody's giving their feedback, good or bad, right away. And you either feel pretty good or you feel terrible. But either way, you feel like people are reading it or seeing your work. And when I used to work for NASCAR Scene, we would we'd sometimes get a letter to the editor or something like that about a column, but you'd pretty much write it and the magazine would go out, mail off into space basically, and you'd never really hear anything from anybody about it. So that's why I do it. I enjoy hearing from everybody and seeing what their opinions are, and I like the conversation part of it, and that's what social media is all about, is the conversation.
Absolutely. That's it's really cool, and it's really, just earlier, in the last hour, you posted the story on this whole thing we've been talking about with the penalties, and of course, right before we came on the show, me and Sherwin are both sitting here reading through your article and writing up notes and everything. So the immediacy of everything, that's really cool about that. I'm glad you bring that up.
Well, and I'll forever consider you the inventor of the tweet up, at least from the NASCAR perspective.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, I didn't invent. I think I had seen the term somewhere. I think maybe NASA or somebody had done one, and it was in my head, and I just said, let's do that. It was at Atlanta in 2009 Labor Day weekend. I had started to get, I think I had 2,000 or 3,000 followers at the time, and some people had been like, hey, can we meet up? I want to say hi. And I just thought it would be easier for me, just selfishly, to just meet up with everybody at the same time instead of run all over the track, try to find people and say hi. So I was just like, well, let's just do a tweet up outside the media center at X time or whatever. And I think 3 people came. So
that's a bummer, because me and Sherwin were at that race if it was Atlanta.
Yeah. Oh, you were there?
We were at the yeah. So And we're getting some comments on our Periscope right now. You might have seen them if you were watching it, that people are saying they've met some really cool people at Tweet Up. So I think it's changed in a lot of ways, at least a subset of folks who are following along on Twitter. For me especially, just changed the way that I plan for a race weekend. You know, me and Sherwin now just say, okay, well, we're going to, we do tent camping, and we say we're going to put some food on the smoker or something. Then we're going to go to the Tweet Up. Of course, we're going to the Tweet Up, and then we're going to come back and do blah, 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 and then go to the race. It's like it's a part of the weekend now, so it's really cool that's
part of the schedule.
It's as part of a schedule as going to the race. So it's really cool.
Well, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That makes me really happy to hear that.
Good.
I take more pressure hearing that too, though. Because you know what the worst feeling is like, okay, so because we've had some pretty cool guests at times. We've had a lot of drivers come through. We've even had like celebrities, musicians that the track will bring, that happen to be there. And like then there's the races where we just can't find anybody, and so it's just like me and Bob show up, and you could I feel like maybe it's just in my mind, but you feel the look on people's faces, and they're like, "Wait, is that it? Like it's just you and Bob? Oh, okay."
Ironically, you're the two that we actually want to talk to.
Right.
I mean, drivers are cool and all, but they're going to get mobbed by all the women and fanboys and stuff. We'd rather talk racing with you and Bob.
Mm-hmm. So
that's nice of you.
And now that said, we did get to shake Bobby Allison's hand at Bristol last year, and that was one of the highlights of my racing resume, if you will. So
I remember that Tweet Up. I think I believe I think that was the one where I was trying to explain to him what a Tweet Up was, but I was failing. Like he just didn't.
Not surprisingly.
Yeah.
So the rest of the questions are not going to be that heavy, but because we got 12 of them here.
Yeah, we got to fire off.
One of our regulars, one of the big supporters of the PETM posse, Kyle Larson Updates is what he calls himself, at 42_updates. He asks, what have you gleaned from your "Was This a Good Race" poll, and if any adjustments that you would make to the sport as a result of that? What are you seeing? What sort of trends do you see, and what do you think NASCAR ought to do about that?
Well, night races have taken a beating in that poll this year for sure. And so that's kind of like made people, some people in the industry, I think even Dale Jr. piled on at one point. He's like, man, nobody likes those damn night races. But I don't know if it's the races themselves or the track. I just don't know if you can just say, because there's been different times of year when some of the night races happen, so the temperatures have been different. It's still hot at night some places, and you can slide around. So I think it's more of the tracks. I do think that the mile and a half, I'm just not a huge fan of them in general. And it's really, I think all the time about like how different would the sport be if you took all the mile and a halves and those were all short tracks, and then the short tracks were the mile and a halves. Like it was like basically awesome. There was mostly short tracks, and that was what the sport was. Mm-hmm. This sport would be like, in my opinion, way more popular because you'd have
gangbusters,
guys running into each other every week. You'd have anger and tempers and drama and exciting close racing. And man, I think that would be spectacular. But unfortunately, the way that it was built up, and it's kind of hard to change, obviously, is it's an intermediate track dominant sport.
Have you been happy with the results of that, or have you? I really think it's cool just seeing. Me and Sherwin are both engineer, techie guys, and to see the data that you have put together is really neat. Is that something that you're like every week just kind of giddy, like, oh man, new data, this is awesome?
I love to look at it. Yeah, it's kind of interesting that you can kind of tell where it's going in the first. Almost in like the first 10 or 15 minutes, even though it's a really small sample, it kind of ends up trending that way. It might change within maybe like 10 to 15%, but it's pretty much how it's going to be.
Oh, that's cool.
The one thing that I'm concerned about, and that it's, obviously it's not a scientific poll, but the one thing that I'm really concerned about is I think that sometimes the winner does affect it maybe 10 or 15% either way as well. Like it could be a bad race that's won by a popular driver or a well-liked driver, and that can get boosted up a little bit. Or it could be a fairly decent race that is won by like a Kyle Busch or Keselowski or Logano, who people don't like, and then so they're going to be like, no, it wasn't a good race.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of a concern, but I don't think that's the whole thing.
All right. Question.
All right. So moving on to something a little bit lighter.
Yeah. Question 3 from Joe at JOJO_6040 is asking you, have you ever forgotten anything essential to your job en route to the racetrack?
Yes, absolutely. So, but I didn't know that I was forgetting it at the time. So, this was my third ever race covering it. It was at Martinsville, and it was back when they had the rule where you had to have long pants in the pits. And this was in April, and it was like the first kind of warmish race of the year, April 2004. And so I was living in Rocky Mount, North Carolina at the time, which was about 3.5 hours from Martinsville. So I woke up, I put my shorts on, and I drove to the track, and I start walking in the infield with my pass, and the guy's like, no, you can't come in here. And I was like, oh, this is a media pass.
Yeah, what are you
He's like,
talking about?
no, you don't have long pants on. You can't come in here with shorts. And I was like, oh, crap. And, it was one of those things where the traffic pattern, there's no way I was going to be able to run to Walmart or something. And so I started walking around the souvenir haulers, and I was like, I've got to find long pants, but I can't just, get, colorful Jeff Gordon pants or something. Like, what am I going to do? So I ended up, I happened to walk by Dale's senior hauler, and there was a pair of, mostly black sweatpants with just a tiny sort of 3 logo up by the hip. So I bought those for $40, and then basically I walked around the entire day in the media center with my shirt pulled over the hip so you couldn't see the 3 logo, so it just looked like I was wearing black sweatpants. But that was a pretty embarrassing day.
That is
awesome.
That's hilarious.
That's much better than I would have ever imagined that question turning out.
Do you still have those pants?
Absolutely. I spent $40 on them. I'm going to wear them around the house.
Awesome. Our question number 4, we're just going to kind of gloss over quickly, but I wanted to give props to our guy, longtime listener, Deputy Hines is what we call him, but at Hines PA Hunter. Rob Hines.
He's from Pennsylvania, very near Pocono.
Yeah, and he had asked us before the penalties and stuff, and before the announcements today, he said, should all chase cars have to go through post-race laser inspection? And I thought that was a great question all the way up until NASCAR answered that question for us.
NASCAR answered it for us.
Said, yes,
wow,
they should.
Good call by him.
Yeah, so giving him props on that one. Moving to the next question is Colby McClam at KGEE61 says, what's your favorite race you've ever been to, if you have one? And why? I think that would go.
That's tough.
You've been to a bunch.
One of them for a long time was the 2005 Coke 600, where I know it's kind of embarrassing to say because it was the all-time record for cautions, so people will be like, oh, you just like the cautions. But it was the Levigation race where they screwed up the track. And it was just so – it was just so crazy. Everything was happening. I think Dale Jr. and Michael Waltrip ran into each other. I think Sterling Marlin and McMurray or somebody ran into each other. There was teammates battles. And then at the very end, you have Bobby Labonte's going to win the race, and Jimmy Johnson comes off the last corner, sticks it on the high side, and beats him to the line. Bobby Labonte gets out of his car and kicks it. And it was just man, that was just a crazy race. That one sticks out. And the other one is 2011 Homestead, Tony Stewart's unbelievable drive to win that. That was pretty incredible to watch.
Yeah. I think that one was asked for me and you too, Sherwin, but I think pretty easily one of my top 5, maybe top 3 live sports moments was 2 years ago when Casey Kane won to get into the chase. And Jeff, me and Sherman are both Casey Kane fans. I'm
sorry for you.
We're not upset. We're sorry.
We understand.
Yeah, we get it. But
we have a good perspective on it.
It was one of my top sports moments for a guy that you've been following for a long time and you've been a fan of to win the race. To go into the playoffs, it meant more than just winning, but it meant getting.
Well, not just that, but watch him lead the last 30-ish laps and then have that caution thing go on,
nail biter,
and him
all the way to the end.
Do that restart thing that he only has when it matters, like he did at Pocono. We just get all you can get.
Yep.
That was really cool. That was one of our better moments at a race. We've had some pretty neat football moments. We'll talk about that later, but That as far as racing goes, that was definitely the pinnacle.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny though? How I'm not like, I know most people have root for drivers who win fairly often or whatever, but like I was talking to this Casey Mears fan at Chicagoland, and I was like, so why are you a Mears fan? And he was talking about how he likes to root for the underdog and stuff. And obviously Mears hasn't really won or come close, but I mean, if you root for a guy that doesn't win as often for whatever the reason, to have that happen, like, it's just the moment as a fan, I bet, it's just got to be, I mean, it's like a 12 or 13 seed winning an NCAA tournament game or something when they weren't expected to. And I think the payoff as a fan is way bigger for that than if your team is favored or whatever,
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Yep.
100%.
Question number 6, Jeff, from Colby McClam as well. What was the inspiration for the quiet track pictures? That's something that you've done for a few years now that's really been cool. And I've seen also some people catch on to that. I think Ryan McGee sent you one of Bristol after the football game last week, 2 weekends ago.
Well, Kelly Crandall and Matt Weaver and Matt Owens, I think, have all done their own version of that.
Yeah. So what's been your inspiration for that, and what do you think of how it's kind of taken off?
That's another really cool thing that I really enjoyed. People sending me stuff. Like, I get a lot of people sending me them from their local short track and stuff. And I'm like, man, that's awesome. And I don't really know how to handle it. I don't know if I should. Sometimes I'll retweet them, and then I'm like, man, I feel like bad blowing everybody's timelines up with random short track, quiet track pictures, and I don't want to like annoy people in my Twitter feed or something. But I don't know. I think we stay so long after the races, and you walk out of these media centers, and you're out there on pit road, and it's all busy, and everybody's running around getting interview stuff, right? Then you go inside and you write for like 2 or 3 hours.
Uh-huh.
You emerge, and it's just all quiet and peaceful, and there's like not a sound, and you're just like looking at this peaceful track where there was just all this noise and
commotion and
craziness, and it's just, I'm like, wow, this is awesome. So I don't know, I just started taking pictures, and it just became like a tradition for me before I walk out to just take a moment and look at everything and just kind of reflect for a minute. And I enjoy doing it.
Super cool. Question number 7 from Pat Cleary at Pat Wolf 13. He asks, is there a track that you associate with a particular driver? He had mentioned having seen Kyle Petty win a spring race at Rockingham that stuck in his mind. Wondering if there's any track that you're like, this is this guy's track.
Yeah, the one that comes to mind is probably Dover with Jimmy.
That was mine.
I mean, it kind of just seems like every time we go there, he either wins or is the story somehow for not winning. Like, I think there was that one, wasn't it a race a few years ago where like Jimmy got penalized for jumping the restart against Montoya or something, and I think Jimmy was going to win, and he was all pissed that NASCAR said that he jumped the restart or something. And like, so even when he doesn't win, it's like, and like last year's Chase race, he was the story because he had something go wrong at Dover instead of win. So
he broke something and wrecked last year, didn't he?
Yeah. And the story was he didn't win.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Question 8. What was your first I can't believe I'm here or I can't believe I'm talking to this guy moment?
That's a great question. I think that probably the first race I ever went to jumps out, which was Rockingham 2004.
Oh, cool!
The last Rockingham race ever. I was never a NASCAR fan, and I had never been to a race or watched a race or anything. I was working in Rocky Mount at this tiny paper, and my sports editor said, "Hey, I'm gonna send you the Rockingham race." And I was like, no, I don't like NASCAR. That's not really my thing. And he's like, no, you never know when you're going to need to, learn how to cover all different sports. It could come in handy. You want to be versatile and know the rules of all those different sports and how they work.
What a great mentor.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And so I went, and I was just like blown away. I was like, oh man, this is so cool. But one of the things was I remember being in the driver's meeting, and I didn't know that many drivers, but I knew who Jeff Gordon and Dale Jr. were, and like I remember all the drivers are walking in their street clothes and they're sitting next to each other and they're joking and all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. I can't believe like they just let you get up close like that. And like, I'm allowed to be in here. What the heck? This is nuts. Like, so I just thought that was cool. And, I remember seeing Richard Petty and I was like, wow, Richard Petty goes to races still? Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
And he still does.
Like, there he is. Yeah, he still does. So I don't know. I think that was probably just that first race.
Very cool. Question 9. Did you, at the time, I know as a media guy, you can't play favorites or anything, and I understand that because we've had a few of media folks on it, old Matt Weaver and Kelly Crandall and a few other folks. But was there a favorite driver, like when you first started, somebody that you looked at and thought, wow, that guy's cool? Or even now, if somebody like interviews really well on a consistent basis, somebody that you look forward to talking to?
I guess maybe because the way I came into it, not growing up with it, I never really had, a favorite. I always just kind of looked at it as stories. I mean, I do kind of pull for good stories in some ways. Like, I don't want to go to the track and, I'm sitting there and I know that I have a column due like an hour after the race. And I'm like, please give me something good to write about.
Yeah.
Like, if so-and-so wins again, oh, God, what am I going to write this time? Like, I already wrote this angle. I already wrote this angle about this guy. Like, what else is there to say? So, I kind of just, like, sit there hoping for something good to happen. But it's not really – I don't really have any individual – I try to keep myself out of – I just feel like as soon as you start feeling sympathy or hope toward one person or – then you sort of lose your internal unbiased ways, and I don't want to do that.
I gotcha.
That makes sense. Okay, so we were on number 10.
Number 10.
All right. So this is kind of off the wall. This is not racing related. Rusty and I are going to go as we always do to all the Georgia Tech home games, but we'll be at the Georgia Tech versus Clemson game tomorrow night at Bobby Dodd Stadium, and that represents a pretty good footprint of NASCAR fandom. But the question we want to ask you is, what's a non-racing sporting event that's like on your bucket list that you hadn't done yet?
Wow, that's a really good question. I've actually been to a lot. I've actually gotten to go to Super Bowl. I've gotten to go to the Masters.
Oh man.
I've gotten to go to 6 Final Fours. So there's like a ton of stuff that I've gotten to go to. I went to the national championship game for football one year. I'm just trying to run through like what else is there. I've been to, I've never been to the Kentucky Derby.
Boom. Boom.
I actually was at the Belmont last year to see
the
Triple Crown.
Oh man.
Were you really? That's so awesome.
Wow.
Yeah. So I have my betting ticket right here. I'm looking at it right now. It's framed.
Cool. Yeah. Framed.
I went with Alan Cavana, and he framed it with a picture of us at the track and gave it to me for a wedding present. So
that is so very cool.
Wow. What a guy.
Yeah. But yeah. So I think maybe the Kentucky Derby would be one. But like I'm actually kind of like I feel like I'm a collector of experiences. Like I want to be at big games and like so I could tell my grandkids someday like, oh, I was at that event, I was at that game
for sure.
So
let us know when you figure out where to go, and we'll meet you there.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Let's do it.
We're in. Number 11, almost there. The one question we always ask every person who comes on the podcast: what is the one thing you would change about NASCAR? And that can either mean just something that you would like to see, something that puts butts in the seats or eyes on the TV or anything. But you can be greedy about it, you can be holistic about it. But what's the one thing that you would change about NASCAR?
I think you really got to address the schedule, especially. It's not I know a lot of people point to the number of races and the length of the season, but I point more toward going to the same tracks over and over and over again, and in the same order. And do they really need to go to Pocono twice in a short time, Michigan twice in a short time, New Hampshire twice in a short time? If you could somehow go to, I don't know, about 36 different tracks, but, maybe 34, 30, 30 different tracks and only repeat it, maybe Daytona and a couple others or something. Like why do they need to go to to all these tracks twice. I think that would be really fun. You could really have a national tour. I think the fan bases in each city would be way more energized and motivated to go out, just like they had been in Fontana. Once they took that second race from Fontana, all of a sudden that race has been bursting with energy. The fans have, the stands are pretty much close to sold out when you go there now. So, I think that would be a big thing if you could get all over the country that way. And maybe that means going to like some really tiny tracks, but it's more of a TV sport now anyway. So if you go to a track that only seats 30,000, is that really that bad?
Good point.
You could build up the infrastructure temporarily and, just go from there.
Yeah.
Hell, Hickory could still support 30,000.
Yeah.
Bowman Gray seats 15, I think. Yeah. So I think we're very much in agreement with you on that we need some variety in the schedule. I think we have too many tracks. We have Vegas and Kansas and Kentucky and Chicagoland that all look the same. We have Charlotte, Atlanta, and Texas that all basically look
Vegas.
the same. We know those tracks are different in personality, but they feel like they're the same. Tracks like Bristol and Martinsville and Richmond and even the Magic Mile, even though we discussed earlier that the racing hadn't been great, it still has this sort of aura around it about being something different.
Mm-hmm.
That feels like what we should do.
Yeah, and Jeff, you got a lot of love on the Periscope for that one. A lot of people commenting and throwing hearts our way. So I think
nice.
you have a lot of backers on that one. All right, question number 12, and we'll round this out and let you go. I appreciate you being on for
signature segment.
This is our signature segment. We call this segment "Strange with Stang." Ashley Stang is a NASCAR K&N Series owner, and she always provides us a weekly off-the-wall question or topic or scenario for us. And this one, Jeff, was specially designed for you. So we're giving props to Ashley Stang for this one. We know you're a fan of Survivor, right? And so
absolutely.
If the drivers that made the chase, so the 16 guys that made the chase, had to be on Survivor, and you get to bet on them and you get to split the winnings and all that, who's your pick? Who are you picking to win Survivor?
This is actually pretty easy. I'm going to pick Jimmy Johnson. Okay, so
good call.
This is why. So number one on Survivor, the whole thing is outwit, outplay, outlast. So you have to be smart and you have to get along with people and be respected in order to move through. And I think a lot of people,
get along.
The other drivers
respect
Harvick. Jimmy Johnson. They're not going to vote him off right away. They're going to look to him as a leader. So he's going to make it through the early rounds. Number two, outplay. A lot of that has to do with physical challenges. He's obviously very much in shape. He would be able to compete and win immunities and things like that. And then outlast, I just think that he would be able to form alliances and bonds with people and really earn people's trust. And I just think he would be able to make it to the end. And if he got there, the jury members who are voting for the winner would vote for him. So I just think that he's the most sort of respected and authentic type guy. So that would be my pick.
Now, hold on, Jeff. I think you said something that's going to drive the outside of NASCAR sports world a little bit crazy. Did you say Jimmy Johnson is an athlete?
Maybe implied at least. I think we let Jeff have the last word. I know we always answer the Strange with Stang question, but Jeff was more even in tune with the outlast. Sorry, I hadn't watched it in a while.
Yeah,
but that was a fantastic answer, Jeff. Really appreciate that, and Jeff, really appreciate you coming on the show. Let's let you go because I know you got some stuff coming up in 10 or 12 minutes here. I don't know if you're sweating bullets. Are these guys ever going to let me go? But
no, it's all good. That's what the DVR is for. But it is the premiere Survivor in 10 minutes, and I actually wrote a blog post on my personal site today because I really want people to watch it that haven't given a chance in a while because it's just it's so much similar to NASCAR where if you don't if you could watch NASCAR but you don't have people to talk about it with, it's not as fun. So I just want people to watch Survivor selfishly so that we can talk online about it and be like, oh my gosh, did you see that move? Oh, that's crazy. I can't believe you did that.
Awesome.
So anyway, I'm excited that it's on. The theme of this season is millennials versus Gen X. So I'm interested to see who's going to come out on top.
Interesting.
So you versus me, or
no? Like Jeff. I think you're in the same age group as we are. That's kind of like between.
Yeah, I'm
two.
definitely a tweener.
Yeah, like not really millennial, not really Gen X, somewhere in between things. So
yeah, I'm right on the border too. So I kind of identify with both.
Yes.
Yep.
We're the group that still says "get off my lawn," but we grew up with computers.
Yeah. Grew up with record players and computers. So, Jeff, we can't thank you enough for being on the show today. This has been awesome. Tell us where to find you, and as if the people on that don't know where to find you, but anything you want to promote, anything you want to talk about before we let you go.
No, I mean, just if anybody is listening or watching the Periscope and you haven't been to a Tweet Up. When you come to the track, definitely come out and say hi. It's just kind of low-key and casual, but I'd love to meet you guys and see what's on your mind.
Yeah, that's an appointment for us every time. Like we said, can't thank you enough for being on, Jeff. I hope we don't drive you away and make you say, I'm pissed at these guys. I'll never be on that show again. But we've had a blast, man.
Yeah, me too. It was really fun. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks, right. Jeff.
And we'll talk to you next time.
Sounds good.
See you around. Bye. Dude, I know, right? Now we get to like.
We're still live with y'all. We're still recording.
Yep.
We got a couple more segments to get to before we get y'all out of here.
I know we're 56 minutes in or something.
We had to get Jeff, let him get to his live television stuff he wanted to watch. We understand that personal stuff. We have some of the same wants and needs.
Yeah, definitely.
We have a couple more segments to get to, though.
Yeah, definitely.
We have By the Numbers, and we have our sponsored car.
Yeah,
24K.
Mr. Ken Smith. And, man, that was – I just got to – I feel like I still got to come down from
Woo! Shaking off.
That was really cool to have Jeff on.
We're not going to miss the segments. We saw all of the Periscope chatter.
For sure.
Some folks yelling at us because we didn't do our normal segment. So, I am drinking.
Oh, what are you drinking? You're drinking like –
I'm drinking like clear whiskey and like alcoholic root beer.
That was a very good
I need
call.
Some training wheels or something over here.
I'm drinking a 10-year bourbon, or was it a whiskey?
Calumet?
Yeah,
it's a bourbon.
Oh, bourbon. Very nice. So Sherwin brought
single barrel.
Oh, single barrel. I was wondering why it tasted so good.
Yeah.
By the numbers, y'all. It's episode number 64. And so we figured we'd talk about number 64. 64... the best one here. Listen to this name, y'all.
64.
Elmo Langley.
Elmo.
Oh, Elmo.
My gosh.
Man. 431 races in the number 64 car.
You know what? That is exactly 431 more races than I've run in the 64 car.
Well, let me give you this. 2 wins in that car, which is exactly 2 more wins than you've ever had, too.
Infinity more wins than I've had.
You're just not...
I don't have it.
Stacking up against Elmo Langley. I'm telling you.
I don't have it.
He was in the 64 car for 27 years in the mid-50s.
27 years.
In the mid-50s into the 1980s.
Goodness gracious, that's commitment.
I'll tell you what. He after he was done racing, he served as crew chief for guess who? Cale Yarborough and Dale Jarrett.
You liar.
I couldn't even say Dale Jarrett's name. I was so excited about that stat.
Bulldog and DJ.
His last
pretty
race,
impressive.
His last race was in 1991 in a Legends car at Charlotte, and he was racing against Cale Yarborough, Junior Johnson, Pete Hamilton, and Donnie Allison, to name a few.
You shut your mouth.
He had a side-by-side finish between him and Cale at the end of the race, and he won the race. That was his last race he ever raced.
Elmo Langley.
Langley. You
don't never know what you're going to find out when you listen to By the Numbers here on
between
the PETM
1989
podcast.
and 1996, he was the official pace car driver for all Winston Cup races. Like for 7 years, 8 years.
So he was like Jeff Bodine for 7 years.
Exactly. Unfortunately, he left us in a heart attack in 1996 while driving a pace car for a race in Suzuka, Japan.
You want to guess who won that race?
In Suzuka, Japan?
Yeah, you want to know?
Did you know?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Dale Earnhardt Sr.
Oh, my God. Cheers to you, Elmo Langley. Let's
Only
hold
race
glasses
ever run
up.
in Japan
That
by the
is
NASCAR
so
Winston
cool.
Cup, won by Dale Earnhardt Sr.
That is so cool. Quick update in Kenny Smith in the PETM podcast 24K car up there in Iowa at Lee County Speedway. I don't know if this race was at Lee County Speedway, but y'all listen up. Top 10 machine.
Top 10 machine.
Top 10 machine. In the heat race, he finished second after there was a red flag for a car that flipped at the local track. Flipped over in the stock series. Flipped.
In the stock compact car series.
Holy
what
crap.
in the world?
Wow. In the feature, he was running fifth. The caution came out, and then he said a demolition derby broke out, and he ended up 10th and ended up with bending the left rear on the car, a lot of beating and banging. Funny part was after the feature, a bunch of fights broke out between 4 different drivers because of all the beating and banging. So
that's a bunch of fist fights.
Dramatic night up there in Iowa.
Sounds like they were at Winder Barrel.
Yes, sir. Yeah, went to a fight and a race broke out. So we're gonna close it out there, Sherwin. Let's bring up.
No.
Yes, it's
We're
Jelly
all
Bean
done.
Closeout Challenge. I mean, we've been talking for an hour now, and y'all,
For
Jeff
sure.
Gluck, tell me about that.
Dude,
huh?
we're fresh out of jelly beans.
Oh man, well we're just gonna have to pretend then. We're just gonna have to drink whiskey or something.
I thought
Then
we had like 2 pounds of them laying
they're
around somewhere.
way under there somewhere. We'll get to them next time.
You lazy piece of
No.
no good. Why I never, boy?
I'll tell you what. Here I'll say. Y'all know where to follow
we're
us.
closing out too. Georgia Tech versus Clemson tomorrow night. That's where we're going to be.
Yes, sir.
Big time, big boy college football.
Yes, sir. We want to thank Jeff Gluck for being on the show again.
How cool
Just
was that?
we're not worthy. We're not worthy. That stuff.
It's
That
very
was
much a
really
we're not
cool.
worthy situation.
Super
we're
fun
very
talk.
thankful for Jeff's time. I'm eyeing too much. That's how you know I'm
yeah.
Thank you,
You're having
Jeff
fun.
Gluck. If you listen to this, for sure.
If you're listening right now and you do not have a PETM podcast sticker, and you think, well, I don't want to bother the guys, think again. Just send us a tweet, send us a DM, send
Tweet,
us an
DM
email.
us.
Go to the website, PETMpodcast.com. Anything.
You can email us.
We
at-
want to send you, you're listening right now, we want to send you a sticker. All you got to do is reach
and
out.
It's, this sticker
It's
right
free.
here.
Yep, it's free.
It's free.
Everything's free.
Join the PETM posse.
Yes, sir. So y'all know where to find me. I'm Rusty Wallace at Tailgate Mayor.
And I am Andrew Sherwin at Pregame ENG.
Y'all follow us at PETM Podcast, and we'll talk to y'all next week.
Thumbs up.